Into the conversation, Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs and observer of Israel's War Cabinet, Ron Dermer. He previously served as the Israeli ambassador to the United States. Mr. Dermer, thanks for being with us this morning. Let's start with the strikes on those refugee camps where civilians were killed, Palestinian civilians were killed. Can you please tell us about the calculation you make about attacking a place like that?
Well, first of all, I want to thank all of you there. I got to listen to the last 5-minute discussion for the basic moral clarity. Because if you can't wholeheartedly condemn the attack that happened on October 7th, then you're not for civilization and you're standing for barbarism. And so I appreciate it. We have a lot of nuances in the Middle East, a lot of issues we can discuss, but there's some times where you have to draw a clear moral line. And I heard it around that table today, and I appreciate it very much. As for the attack that happened in the refugee camp, first of all, you have to understand, we've told everybody to leave those areas, and most of the people have been out of the northern part of the Gaza Strip. There was about 1.1 million people before the war began. About 800,000 have left. Another couple 100,000 are in facilities that are kind of that are not being targeted. They could be UN facilities, they could be hospitals, but we've told everybody to leave repeatedly. You saw a lot of people around that crater that are able-bodied people that should have been out of there. They should have been nowhere near where those bombings occurred. What we had is targets, underground targets, which requires us to use these weapons that can reach deep under the ground and hit the terrorists who are all hiding. And we struck and we killed them. And unfortunately, those civilians were there. They should not have been there at all. But it doesn't mean that the act that Israel had is not legitimate. It's not justified. We are actually targeting a terror tunnel network under the ground. And we implore people, and I'll say it again, get out of the northern part of the Gaza Strip, go to the south. There are places in the south, especially in the southwest, that are safe zones where people will not be harmed. And I hope that they will take that advice so that not a single civilian has to be hurt.
Mr. Dermer, let's talk about the idea of a ceasefire proposed by the UN, for example, but also we're hearing it from groups across the United States, college campuses, things like that. We just discussed what the spokesman for Hamas said in no uncertain terms, that October 7th, in effect, is the beginning, that we want there to be many more. He says we'll do it again and again and again, and just saying explicitly that the goal is the annihilation of Israel. So what is your view of the idea of a ceasefire?
Well, I think one of you said it right. It's like having a ceasefire with ISIS or a ceasefire, with the Japanese after Pearl Harbor, or ceasefire with the Nazis. You have to defeat this enemy. We're going to have to eliminate Hamas's military capability in Gaza. We're going to have to end its political rule of Gaza. And we're going to have to ensure that Gaza no longer represents a threat to the people of Israel and, frankly, a threat to Palestinians, because Palestinians have to suffer through these endless rounds as well. We have to free Gaza from Hamas completely. And so any call for a ceasefire, I think, is a big mistake. The issue becomes, is there a pause here or there so that you can get hostages or something out? And that's a different story. I heard what the president said yesterday. It wasn't clear to me if that's what he was talking about. I think one of you said earlier that you want to make sure that foreign nationals get out. We want to make sure that aid comes in. We do that all the time. We don't target aid vehicles. We could easily do it. We're letting the aid get to those areas that are the safe humanitarian zones. And obviously, we're very pleased right now that foreign nationals are being allowed to leave. There were several hundred who left yesterday. Today, there's supposed to be, I think, 500 or 600, including many, many Americans. Hamas prevented them from leaving for 3 weeks. And I know it's a great blessing for them and their families, and Israel is very pleased to see them leave. And I hope over the next 3, 4, 5 days, all of the foreign nationals, there's about 6,000, but all of the foreign nationals who want to leave will be able to leave that war zone.
Yeah, and let's be very clear for people who are watching this show. Again, it's Israel who has been telling Palestinians to move south. It's the United States that's been pushing Egypt to open the crossing so Palestinians can go to safety. And the organization, for Americans who are confused by Hamas propaganda, the organization that has been against that has been Hamas. They have been against Palestinians going to safety, and they make these pronouncements from Four Seasons hotels in Qatar. And telling the Palestinians to stay there and basically be human shields, because when a Jew dies, it's great for Hamas. And when a Palestinian dies, it's great for Hamas. Ron, it's good to see you. I haven't talked to you since October 7th, so we're also sorry for what you and your country's gone through. I want to follow up on something that Joe Biden said when he was having a press conference with the Prime Minister of Australia. He, of course, wholeheartedly supported Israel's right to defend themselves and take this war to Hamas, and he will continue to do that. He did at the same time ask that extremists in the West Bank not do anything against Palestinians, that only fan the flames of violence. I would like you to speak to that. Do you agree with the president that Israelis in the West Bank need to treat their Palestinian brothers and sisters with respect and show dignity?
Obviously, Joe, there are over 500,000 people who live in Judea, Samaria, and the West Bank. I think what the president was talking about is a very small group of people. It could be 100, it could be 200, who may try to attack this Palestinian or that Palestinian. When you're dealing with such a huge number of people, 500,000, you can have a very small extremist faction that can do those things. And Israel has to have zero tolerance for that. We're not going to allow anybody to attack innocent civilians and to target innocent civilians. It's unacceptable. I just think that when we're dealing with what we're dealing now in Gaza, in the region, I think that is a tempest in a teacup. That's not the main issue. That's on Israel. We have to make sure we speak out.
It's not the main issue. It's not the main issue, and we've been talking about what Hamas has done 98% of the time. I'm just asking you, as somebody that I know, right? I'm not. Just asking you, somebody I know. It is so important that we do two things at once. We Americans, I believe this, and I think the president believes this, that the terrorists be rooted out, that Hamas be destroyed, but that the Palestinians that are living there are shown a way forward, are given a reason to hope, to believe that maybe there's a two-state solution over the horizon after Hamas is destroyed, and Israel actually has good faith actors to negotiate with in Gaza and in the West Bank.
Yeah, what I will say to you is the issue is you can't take, I'm not saying you're doing this, but sometimes this happens, where you take something that is a completely marginal phenomenon and you think that that's mainstream. Every society, Israel, Palestinian society, American society, Britain, Germany, it doesn't matter. You can always have an extremist that's going to do something bad. The question becomes, how does the society respond to it? Does it condemn that action? Does it try to spit those people out, or does it embrace it and celebrate it? The problem we have with Palestinian society,
and you've condemned it.
If I can just finish,
just condemned it here this morning.
I know I did condemn it, but here's a basic moral difference, and it has to be put to the Palestinians, not just in Gaza, but also in Judea, Samaria, and the West Bank, and also to Abu Mazen. Your viewers may not know this. You probably know it. Abu Mazen, to this day, the president of the Palestinian Authority, has not condemned the acts of October 7th. He has not condemned it. When Jews are murdered, those actions are celebrated, not just in Gaza, but in the West Bank. That is a fundamental difference. We will not celebrate in Israel the targeting of an innocent Palestinian. No one does that. The political leadership has to speak out against it, and the society has to spit people out who would actually do these extremist actions. The problem that we're dealing with in this conflict is a generation of young Palestinians for 20 or 30 years who've been educated to hate Jews and to destroy Israel. Just instead of looking at the diplomatic statements that are made by all these officials, what I'd ask you to do, one show, devote 5 minutes to it. Show what they're showing Palestinian children on television sets, not just in Gaza, but in the schools in the West Bank. If we're going to have peace one day with the Palestinians, we have to change this whole culture. We have to link our relations with the Palestinians and our willingness to reach a political settlement with them to a change in their entire approach, and to make sure that they're educating children for peace and not educating children for terror.